The tension between the Indiana Fever and the Minnesota Lynx had been building for weeks, simmering beneath the surface like a pot left unattended on the stove. When the two teams collided in this late-season showdown, fans didn't just see a basketball game. They witnessed a culmination of frustration, redemption, and raw determination. This was more than a regular season matchup. It was the Fever planting their flag, declaring that after years of irrelevance, they were ready to fight their way into the spotlight. No matter how many obstacles stood in their path, the scars of their previous meeting were still fresh. Everyone remembered the moment Kayla McBride's elbow connected with Lexie Hull's face, leaving her dazed and bloodied. The crowd gasped, expecting the whistle to punish the aggressor. Instead, in a stunning twist, Hull herself was slapped with the technical foul. Fans in Indianapolis erupted in disbelief, pointing to the incident as yet another example of the Fever being disrespected by officials and overlooked by the league. Hull, usually calm and composed, walked off the court that night with a mix of frustration and quiet rage. For her, it wasn't just a foul. It was an insult, a moment of public humiliation that stuck with her. So when the schedule circled back and Minnesota came to town, it wasn't just another date on the calendar. It was circled in red. Hull had something to prove. The Fever had something to prove. And from the moment the ball was tipped, the energy in the arena was electric. Indiana came out firing, rattling off a 10-0 run that forced an early Minnesota timeout. Fans could feel it instantly. This was going to be a different night. The Fever weren't just trying to compete. They were here to dominate. What makes the victory even more dramatic is the mountain of adversity Indiana had faced leading up to this moment. Nearly half of their rotation had been wiped out by injuries. Caitlin Clark's rookie season ended prematurely with a groin injury, ripping away not just the team's rising star, but also their emotional engine. Sophie Cunningham was sidelined with a torn MCL. Sydney Colson, Chloe Bibby, and Arie McDonald all found their names etched onto the injury list. Their seasons done before they ever truly took off. That group alone could have formed a competitive starting five, yet Indiana was forced to soldier on without them. Most teams would have folded. Most rosters would have buckled under the weight of so many absences. But Indiana leaned into the challenge. Kelsey Mitchell stepped up and became more than a scorer. She became a franchise cornerstone. Averaging over 20 points per night despite constant double teams, she willed the Fever through stretches when it seemed the offense might collapse. Every drive, every jumper, every crossover was delivered with the urgency of a player who knew she was carrying her team's playoff hopes on her shoulders. Then there was Aaliyah Boston. The sophomore forward didn't just fill in the gaps. She anchored the team like a veteran, putting up steady scoring while setting a new franchise record for rebounds in a single season. Her presence in the paint turned chaotic possessions into second chances and gave Indiana the toughness to battle even the league's elite front courts. Every night, Boston brought consistency, and in a season defined by inconsistency, that steadiness became priceless. As the Fever scraped their way into playoff contention, their mindset began to shift. The injuries weren't excuses anymore. They became rallying points. The players left standing refused to see themselves as survivors. They saw themselves as contenders. By the time Minnesota rolled into Indianapolis, the Fever were on a 3-game win streak, clawing their way back to momentum just in time for the postseason. And facing the Lynx, one of the league's best teams, gave them the perfect stage to prove they belonged. From the opening minutes, the Fever dictated the pace. They moved the ball with confidence, attacked the rim with aggression, and pressured Minnesota into rushed shots. By halftime, Indiana had built a double-digit lead, shooting nearly 60% from the field while suffocating the Lynx defense. Minnesota, normally a disciplined, efficient squad, looked rattled. They finished just 2 for 20 from beyond the arc, every miss drawing louder cheers from a Fever crowd that smelled blood. But the turning points weren't just from the stars. This game belonged to the role players and hardship signings who refused to let the season die. Odyssey Sims, brought in mid-season when the roster had been gutted, scored 15 points off the bench and played with the hunger of someone determined to prove she still belonged in the league. Aerial Powers delivered a pair of back-to-back threes in the second half that swung the momentum back in Indiana's favor, just when Minnesota looked ready to claw back. And Natasha Howard provided the glue, cleaning the glass, switching on defense, and hitting key shots when the offense bogged down. Yet, for all those contributions, the moment of the night belonged to Lexie Hull. Midway through the second quarter, she found herself isolated against Kayla McBride at the top of the key. Hull dribbled hard left, hesitated, then crossed back over with a sharp move. McBride lunged, lost her balance, and stumbled to the floor. The crowd erupted as Hull calmly rose up and buried the shot. It wasn't just 2 points. It was a statement. It was redemption. The same player who had bloodied Hull weeks earlier now found herself dropped to the floor, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the building. Social media lit up within minutes, calling it karma, calling it justice, calling it the play that defined Indiana's season. Hull's performance that night wasn't just about one highlight. She played heavy minutes again, guarding Minnesota's backcourt, forcing contested looks, and knocking down shots with confidence. After being dismissed for so long as a mere role player, Hull had carved out her place as a central figure in Indiana's success. She embodied the Fever's resilience, underestimated, doubted, and overlooked, but unshakable when it mattered most. When the final buzzer sounded, Indiana had won 83-72, not just a victory, but a statement. They closed the regular season on a 3-game winning streak, clinched their first winning record since 2015, and walked into the playoffs carrying momentum and belief. 9 years of mediocrity had finally been snapped. The Fever weren't just happy to be here anymore. They were ready to fight for something bigger. Even Caitlin Clark, sitting on the bench in street clothes, was part of the moment. Cameras caught her signaling timeouts, calling coverages, and acting as a de facto assistant coach. Her leadership off the court reminded everyone that even without her on the floor, her presence was still shaping the team's identity. Fans could already imagine what the Fever might look like once she returned healthy. But this night wasn't about what the Fever could be. It was about what they already were. A team that refused to collapse, a roster that found strength in adversity, and a fan base that had waited nearly a decade to feel this kind of pride again. Lexie Hull's crossover on Kayla McBride will live on as one of the most satisfying moments of the Fever's season. Not because it embarrassed an opponent, but because it symbolized everything Indiana had endured and overcome. They'd taken punches all year, literal and figurative, and still found a way to stand tall. Now, as they march into the playoffs, they do so with momentum, unity, and a sense of destiny. Indiana isn't just back, they're dangerous. And if this game proved anything, it's that the Fever are done being overlooked. They're ready to write the next chapter of their story, one that could see them shock the league and force everyone to finally pay attention. So what do you think? Did Lexie Hull's redemption moment against McBride sum up the Fever's entire season of resilience? Can Indiana make a deep run even without Caitlin Clark on the floor? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. The Fever are headed to the playoffs, and this story is only just beginning.